A cartoon that celebrated the idealistic potential of law enforcement in the future, a precinct that brought together the best officers from around the country with the tools and talent to fight for justice in a city overrun by crime, inspired by a toy line that was canceled thanks to Hasbro's unflinching policy of diversity. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of COPS. C.O.P.S is an animated series that originally ran one season of 65 episodes in daily syndication in the US from September to December of 1988. Produced by Deke, based on the toy line from Hasbro, it was rebroadcast in 1993 as CyberCOPS so as not to be confused with the much more popular Fox live-action television show C.O.P.S about real cops fighting crime in prime time. The facts have been kept secret until now. It all began when the notorious underworld kingpin known as the Big Boss sent his henchmen on a spree of high-tech robberies around Empire City. The cadre of crooks were having a field day, and the city police couldn't seem to get a handle on them. Mayor Davis recruited federal assistance from Washington in the form of Agent B.P. Vess, the best criminologist in the country. Vess got right to work with computer specialist Tina Cassidy, tracing crime scene clues back to Dr. Bad Vibe's old apartment, and in the process two of Big Boss's goons, Berserko and Turbo Two-Tone. Taking them down proved to be near fatal as the Crooks' getaway vehicle crashed and Vess found himself underneath a pile of rubble that used to be a building. Vess was hospitalized with severe injuries that would take years to heal, just to the point where he could begin to walk again. But research scientists from the Overdine Institute had an option to accelerate his recovery if he was willing, a risky procedure that would give him a new electronic body covered by a computerized metal shell, making him the country's most unique crime fighter. But first, he did what he should have done in the first place. He called for backup. He recruited a select group of the best police officers gathered from around the country to overcome the threat of Big Boss. Fighting crime in a future time, protecting Empire City from Big Boss and his gang of crooks, the Central Order of Police Specialists. They are COPS. Thank you to Magic Spoon for sponsoring this video. Click the link in the description below and use code TOYGALAXY for $5 off your order today. Magic Spoon is a nutritious, fun, and healthy way to start your day or eat it anytime you want, any place you want. At the beach, at the comic book store, at the mall, at the parking lot waiting to pick up your kids, at the DMV, at the vintage arcade, at the mini golf course, at the studio where you make your YouTube videos. Magic Spoon treats are available in marshmallow, chocolatey peanut butter, double chocolate, and blueberry muffin. They have 11 to 12 grams of protein, 1 gram of sugar, and 1 to 2 grams of net carbs. And all new Magic Spoon protein granola with 13 grams of protein, 0 added sugar, available in flavors like honey almond, blueberry, and my favorite, peanut butter. All Magic Spoon products are backed with a 100% happiness guarantee, so if you don't like them for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Magic Spoon also ships to Canada and the UK. You can also find Magic Spoon on Amazon or in your nearest grocery store. So click the link below or scan the QR code on the screen to try Magic Spoon treats or granola today, and use code TOYGALAXY for $5 off, or go to magicspoon.com/TOYGALAXY to save $5 off your order today, and thanks again to Magic Spoon. COPS was originally conceived of by Marvin Glass and Associates. Founded by Marvin Glass in 1941, it was essentially an idea house. They developed products which they then patented and licensed to other companies to produce and market, receiving royalties in return. Toys and games like 1963's Mousetrap and 1973's Evel Knievel Stunt Cycle for Ideal Toys, or 1967's Light Bright, 1971's Inchworm, and 1974's Ricochet Racers for Hasbro. In 1987, purely coincidentally, around the same time RoboCop hit theaters, Marvin Glass and Associates presented a concept for a line of action figures themed around futuristic police officers. Created by John Fertig, the line was originally called Policeman, a bit generic, not great for SEO. They workshopped it into COPS and Crooks before officially licensing it to Hasbro, at which point Hasbro set their transmedia marketing machine to produce. Hasbro started development on COPS and Crooks by reassigning some of their existing human resources. Bart Sears was an illustrator and comic book artist who was working for Hasbro producing concept art for G.I. Joe figures, WWF wrestling toys, and other pieces of fill-in art for various toys. According to Sears in an interview with Zach Ode of Toy Fair back in 2007, quote, "The original concept drawings that Hasbro bought were all badly done steals, slightly altered off Marvel Comics stuff. As Sears told the story, only 2 of the characters from the original pitch survived, and even those were at least modified. Big Boss, he claimed, was even more similar to the Marvel villain Kingpin. By 1987, Hasbro was 5 years into G.I. Joe with hundreds of figures all built on the same basic body style. As a refugee from G.I. Joe, Sears was excited to introduce a new style of action figure body for COPS and Crooks. one that had a bit more presence than the figures he worked on previously. While the G.I. Joe body was more realistically proportioned, Sears thought it was a bit dumpy. As he put it to Toy Fair, quote, "I convinced the bosses to let me design 3 new bodies for COPS based on more heroic proportions. The basic hero body, from which most of the figures were made, the skinny hero body, and the big boss body. Actually, it was pretty easy designing them. The basics had all been worked out. The hardest part was getting people to realize that changing the status quo was a good thing." Wave 1 hit the market in 1988 and featured 7 COPS and 5 Crooks, each with cap-firing power and other play features like character-specific accessories. Wave 2 followed that with 7 more COPS and 5 more Crooks. There were 9 vehicles, some of which came with figures as well. Each figure came with a cap-firing weapon, additional play gimmicks like Buttons McBoom Boom's hidden torso machine guns, and a file card on the back of the blister like G.I. Joe that explained who the characters were. Like G.I. Joe, that information was written by Larry Hama. Like G.I. Joe, the cards weren't always the same as the show or the comics. For instance, on the file card, BP Vess was about to put Big Boss away for good when he was gunned down in an alley, necessitating the life-saving 21st century microsurgery and cybernetics. In the comics, Vess is hit with a rocket launched from one of Big Boss's goons, necessitating the experimental life-saving cybernetic surgery. In the cartoon, he is crushed under a pile of rubble after attempting an arrest from the back of a moving truck that crashed into a building, then offered experimental life-saving cybernetic surgery by Overdyne. Eagle-eyed toy collectors will recognize other similarities to Hasbro's G.I. Joe, including the use of names like Roadblock and Bulletproof in both lines. Wayne Sneeden III, or Checkpoint in COPS, was canonically the son of G.I. Joe's Beachhead, and while the name Mainframe was also used in the COPS TV series, she never made it into a toy because, ew, girls. In fact, there were several female characters in the show that were never produced as action figures. Nightshade, Mirage, Ms. Demeanor, Squeaky Clean, and even though there was an unproduced third wave in development for 1990, Hasbro was going to introduce ninjas, firefighters, attack androids, and clowns instead of a single icky girl. 15 issues of the comic book simply titled COPS, No Crooks, were published monthly by DC beginning in the summer of 1988, a few months before the animated series began, written by Doug Mensch with art by a rotating group of artists that included Bart Sears himself for 2 issues. According to Mensch from that same interview with Zach Oat, Mensch had no interest in working on the book, but once he was given the freedom to treat the book as his own creation, he relented, confident that it would earn him points with his son. The only stipulation Mensch was given was not to violate the toys, or in other words, have fun, but don't do anything that would subvert the toys and the market they were intended for.
The case of the big Crooks caper. Inside, Hyena, the Crooks Joker, and Nightmare the android were planning the crime.
Everybody got their guns? Yeah!
But outside, Officer Airwave, the COPS communication expert, and Nightstick, the martial arts officer, were onto them.
Come out there, hands up! Never!
Cops! Fighting crime in the future time. The big action battle continues with cops and crooks with cap guns and caps.
By 1987, Hasbro had a well-established system of promoting their toy lines across a spectrum of media platforms. G.I. Joe, Transformers, My Little Pony, all of these toy brands and more could be found on hundreds of licensed items from clothing to party supplies and storytelling media like comic books and cartoons. The important part is that Hasbro diversified their portfolio of not only toys but television productions. See, in 1985, Hasbro recorded a windfall of $337 million, more than the total sales of Tonka and Galoob combined, built on the backs of the Cybertronian Civil War. Transformers was the hot new toy thanks largely to the daily syndicated 22-minute commercials, but maintaining that kind of historical hotness is difficult. Transformers sales dropped 36% in 1986 to just $214 million, from around 30% of Hasbro's total sales to just 16%. For any other company at the time, that would have been disastrous. For Hasbro, it was just a matter of revenues moving from one column to the next because they had a strict policy of diversification, or as it was called in a 1987 article, balance and low prices. As Hasbro CEO Stephen D. Hassenfeld put it in that same 1987 article, quote, "We gave up $123 million in the category and will still grow our business, and nobody else can make that claim. I don't think anybody else in the industry has the balance that we have." And Paul Valentine, another analyst, said, quote, "Hasbro is very fortunate to be where every other toy company would like to be in 2 or 3 years, which is with a broadly diversified product line, the broadest and the best in the industry." By 1987, DiC was already one of the most prolific producers of cartoons as commercials for toys, Rainbow Bright, Care Bears, Mask, Popples, The Real Ghostbusters, Teddy Ruxpin. They were also infamous for underbidding other animation studios, which earned them the nickname Do It Cheaper. Working with the same Bible given to Hasbro and DC Comics, they developed character designs that, in some cases, don't match the toys. Such is the nature of different production timelines and different offices that don't have the luxury of collaboration. That said, many of those character designs for the show were handled by Peter Chung, who worked on other cartoons like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, movies like The Transformers the Movie, and just a few years later went on to create Aeon Flux for MTV's Liquid Television. C.O.P.S has an earworm of a theme song with a repeating bass line that, I can assure you, will get stuck in your head for at least 40 years. Music for the series, including that theme, is credited to Saban and Shuki Levy. While it is possible that they wrote it, it's hard to say for sure given their frequent claims of ownership of the work created by composers that they contracted. Each episode featured a public service announcement to help deflect accusations that C.O.P.S was just an ad for toys and/or PR for police in general. Named C.O.P.S for Kids, the segments were produced in association with groups like DARE and the National Crime Prevention Council and helped reinforce the dangers of drugs, gangs, and female action figures.
But I can remember the good old days when there were all men in my department, and we didn't have these problems.
C.O.P.S was canceled after one season of 65 episodes. There are a few theories as to why, and good news, they may all be correct. 1. C.O.P.S wasn't the only police-themed cartoon and toy series on the shelves. It was sharing jurisdiction with Ruby Spears and Kenner's Police Academy, based on the very popular series of movies. 2. It wasn't the only futuristic police-themed cartoon and toy series inspired by RoboCop on the shelves. It was up against Marvel and Kenner's RoboCop, which also had a cap-firing gimmick. 3. The Nintendo Entertainment System launched in September of 1986 and proceeded to lay waste to the rest of the toy market through 87, 88, and into 89. They posted $1.7 billion in sales in 88, $2.6 billion in 89. That's all money that could have been spent on C.O.P.S. 4. Hasbro misread the market with hilarious results. See, in the late 80s, they were flush with cash. Thanks to all of that product diversity, they went from $136 million in sales in 1982 to $1.3 billion in 1986. That said, they still had favorites. According to Sears, C.O.P.S was a very successful line of action figures and retailers wanted to order more. But by the time those orders came in, Hasbro had already invested in other toy lines, and it was too late to restart the factories. Hasbro had already invested in other new brands like Record Breakers. Perhaps there's someone out there watching this video right now thinking, am I the only one who remembers Record Breakers? In this case, yes, you are. Record Breakers was a line of customizable battery-powered slot cars. See, you buy a basic car for $5 to $12, then customize it with a variety of accessories. Then you race them against your friends in Hasbro-branded Record Breakers racetracks. The more track you have, the more track you have. Citing the success of a similar but legally distinct product that did roughly $40 million in Japan in 1988, Hasbro projected Record Breakers to be the hot new thing for Christmas 1989 in the US with sales of, potentially, conservatively, $100 million.
That is one big pile of shit.
To that end, Hasbro put $7 million into marketing Record Breakers and staged official competitive events around the country at malls. They even produced a television broadcast of the event with Jesse the Body Ventura doing color commentary as overstimulated 7-year-olds wandered around in a daze, clutching their cars to their chests as they hoped to win something their parents called a savings bond.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. That's it, everybody. That's our NARB stop for this week. We'll see you next time from Chicago. For Jesse the Body Ventura, I'm Gary Apple saying so long. See you next time.
Spoiler alert, Record Breakers did not do $100 million over the 1989 Christmas season or throughout 1989. And in fact, there is only one person who remembers it, and it's you. C.O.P.S returned to broadcast in 1993 on CBS Saturday mornings as CyberCOPS. In the time C.O.P.S was away, a new show called C.O.P.S began airing on Fox. Much more popular and more profitable, it had dibs on the name, forcing Deeks C.O.P.S to rebrand. However, 2 years later in 1995, the USA Network changed the name back to just C.O.P.S because fuck the Fox police. If you missed C.O.P.S and haven't bothered to look it up since, or you're just hungry for the deep bass of BP Vess, you can find it streaming online at Tubi. Or the DVD versions might be available in an archive status somewhere on the internet. In 2022, the Cops and Crooks were back as non-posable minifigures produced by Fresh Monkey Fiction, who now own the license, likely a way to test the market for a larger scale return because in 2024, Fresh Monkey Fiction announced a 6-inch scale bulletproof figure to be followed by as many figures as fans are willing to support. And as of this video, Chicken Fried Toys currently has a 4-inch scale Marshall Sundown up for pre-order on their website. We live here, in the near future, where we know that Hasbro continues to diversify their toy offerings and remains one of the biggest toy companies in the world, having consumed most of their competition. Whether or not they still believe in low prices,
that's debatable.
Marvin Glass and Associates ceased operations in 1988. Several of the managing partners started a new licensing company called Big Monster Toys. That company may or may not have ceased operations in December 2023, depending on what their lawyer is counseling them to say. Deke merged with Cookie Jar Group in 2008. The merged entity was rebranded Cookie Jar Entertainment. Cookie Jar Entertainment was purchased by DHX Media in 2012. In 2014, Cookie Jar ceased operations. The near future isn't nearly as cool as the cartoon, comics, or toys would have had us believe. Thus far, we haven't had the need for an all-star team of super cops to police a single city because it's overrun by comic book supervillains. So even though it's not all good, maybe it's not all bad. Thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Thank you very much to those of you who already are. Please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/toygalaxy. Several different tiers to address your specific Secret Galaxy content needs. Check out the Secret Galaxy merch shop at secretgalaxy.shop. All merchandise is physically in stock and ready to ship. Links to all of this in the description below, and let us know in the comments down below if you are a fan of C.O.P.S, the cartoon one, back in the day, and if you're looking forward to the return of action figures. I liked the show well enough back then and am fascinated to find out how much sense that made because the people that made that stuff, like Bart Sears and Peter Chung, were involved and made other stuff that I really like. Apologies to Bart Sears, though. I was not a fan of shaking up the status quo with the figures and the body style. Turns out the cops I needed were the ones willing to police form factor. That's not funny.